Well, hello everyone and welcome to the LIVEcast. Good to see you all again. My name is Paul Feasy and as always, I'm joined by Glen Scrivener.
Hello, Paul Feasy. Here I am in Eastbourne on the Sunshine Coast. Nice to be with you all. Yeah. What are we talking about today, Paul?
Yep. Today we are talking about an item in the news that I think we've talked about it very briefly before because it cropped up last year. It did make the news, but it seems to have resurfaced and it has kind of taken the public interest a bit more now. And it's to do with the situation in China currently at the moment in the Xinjiang region, where what we're hearing are reports of the internment of the Uighur Muslim community and estimates of up to 1 million Muslims, maybe even 2 million, some people are saying, who have been taken and placed into camps where
re-education camps, are we saying?
Well, this is the thing. So yes, so the Chinese government initially denied the existence of these camps and then eventually did come clean and say, they do exist, but they're re-education centres. People are there voluntarily. But actually what people have been claiming, what's come out is that these are not re-education centres. Really, they are nothing more than concentration camps, that people are being imprisoned, tortured. Some people are being killed, that there is forced sterilisation going on amongst the women. And there's just been footage. Again, the footage seems to have been around for quite a while, but it's been just featured in the media recently. Footage of prisoners shaved heads, blindfolded, all on the ground, being then led onto train carriages to be taken off to these camps, which has seemingly come from drone footage.
And it's drone footage from last year, isn't it? 2019, I think.
Yeah, so
where the footage comes from.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this it had come up before. It seems that a lot of news outlets had reported on these things. Not necessarily. I don't know about this footage in particular, but I mean we'd heard about this last year. And if you go back and do your Google search, you'll find a number of media outlets have reported on these things going on, but it doesn't seem as if it really gained any traction. It certainly didn't blow up into a story that everybody was talking about. And it's only really in the last week or so when we saw some posts on Twitter, again, that were posts referring to articles from a year or so ago, or not quite a year, but in 2019, that it seemed to be getting a bit more traction and making some noise on Twitter. So the articles last week were, initially the ones we saw were to do with organ harvesting in China, that China apparently has a very short waiting time for organ transplants, and the accusation is that it's because they are harvesting organs of prisoners. And I don't think that's limited to the Uighur Muslim community. It's certainly put in some of the articles that it may well be happening in those camps as well. But it seems that
and the Falun Gong community, I think, as well.
Yes.
So they have, for at least the last 20 years, most severely been a kind of an oppressed, persecuted religion, which the Chinese state deems a cult. And certainly reports from their news agencies seem to be that organ harvesting is happening from among their number. So again, these are all kind of accusations that are flying around, and it's difficult to know, isn't it? Because and it's difficult when these stories sort of come out and then nobody seems to make much of them, and you wonder, is this really happening? And if this is really happening, why isn't more being said about it?
And I think that people will look at these things and say oh, well, how do we know? And that's the thing that strikes me at the moment, particularly in this day and age, that even with footage and stuff there, people are still saying, oh, we just don't know though. We're so we've been so kind of affected by the fake news kind of things of the past few years that we don't really know quite what to believe. But I think probably, from what we're seeing, it's multiple organizations and countries that are leveling accusations at China on this now. The UN certainly has. It looks like the UK, that's what's kind of broken today or in the last day or so, that the UK is now talking about economic sanctions on China because of gross human rights abuses. People are even throwing around the word genocide. But the fascinating thing is, like we say, that this has been known for a long time, but no one has really got hold of it for quite a while, and we seem to have been able to overlook this for various reasons up until now.
Right. Right, and I think two things that have precipitated the most recent sort of headline-grabbing moments. One of them has been foreignpolicy.com. They've had this article that went up on the 15th of July. And they say, two recent disturbing events may finally awaken the world to the scale and horror of the atrocities being committed against the Uyghurs, a mostly secular Muslim ethnic minority in Xinjiang, China. One is an authoritative report documenting the systematic sterilization of Uyghur women. The other was the seizure by US Customs and Border Protection of 13 tons of products made from human hair suspected of being forcibly removed from Uyghurs imprisoned in concentration camps. Now, as somebody who has been to Auschwitz and has seen the room at Auschwitz that is called the exploitation of the corpses, that's a really chilling thing, and it's the most haunted. It's the most haunted room I've ever been in. To walk through Auschwitz and you see. It's the one place that you're not allowed to take photographs in because there are human remains in that room because there is just tons and tons of human hair that was collected by the Nazis and just the kind of the horrible conveyor belt of death under the Nazi regime that they wanted to extract every last penny from their victims, including shaving their heads. And then, there's a big glass case with spectacles in it and a big glass case with shoes in it. And obviously that was, one of the real evils of the Nazis is they said, look, go and have your shower and tie up your shoes and put your name tag on your shoes here so that you'll know where they are when you come back from your shower. Yeah. And, of course, they never came back from their shower. But, so... We have for a long time spoken of the exploitation of corpses as one of these markers of genocide. And here in that article from foreignpolicy.com, it says, the Genocide Convention, to which China is a signatory, defines genocide as specific acts against members of a group with the intent to destroy that group in whole or in part. These acts include A, killing, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm, C, deliberately inflicting conditions of life to bring about the group's physical destruction, D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Any one of these categories constitutes genocide. And then foreignpolicy.com says the overwhelming evidence of the Chinese government's deliberate and systematic campaign to destroy the Uyghur people clearly meets each of these categories. So, yeah, that's they're pointing to those two issues: the discovery of the human hair and then the forced sterilization. But then there was that very interesting event on BBC Politics as Andrew Ma gets the Chinese ambassador in and asks him about the drone footage. Should we have a look at that? That clip.
Let's have a look at this. Hopefully we can see this come up on the screen.
Let's look at some very disturbing drone footage that's been widely shared around the world. This is almost certainly over northern China, over Xinjiang. Can you tell us what is happening here?
I cannot see, this video. This is not the first time you show me. I still remember last year you showed me what is happening in Xinjiang.
In Xinjiang, exactly.
But let me tell you this. Xinjiang, have you been to Xinjiang yourself?
No, I never have.
Xinjiang is regarded as the most beautiful place in Xinjiang. There's a Chinese saying, you do not know how big China is.
Ambassador, that is not beautiful coverage, however, is it?
Xinjiang, that is exactly what I'm going to tell you. Since 1990, Xinjiang has completely changed because there's thousands of terrorist attacks. People cannot...
That was 10 years ago. Can I ask you why people are kneeling, blindfolded and shaven and being led to trains in modern China? Why? What is going on there?
I do not know where you get this videotape. Sometimes you have a transfer of prisons and prisoners, in any country.
But just what is happening here, Ambassador?
I do not know where did you get these video clips.
These have been going around the world. They've been authenticated by Western intelligence agencies and by Australian experts who say these are Uighur people being pushed onto trains and taken off.
Let me tell you this. The so-called Western intelligence keeping up make this a false accusation against China. They said 1 million Uighur has been persecuted. You know how big, how many population Xinjiang has? It's just about 40 years ago. It's 4-5 million. Now it's 11 million people, and people say, you know, we impose, we have a ethnic cleansing, but the population has doubled in the 40 years.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but according to your own local government statistics, the population growth in Uyghur jurisdictions in that area has fallen by 84% between 2015 and 2018. 84%.
That's not right. I said,
Well,
I gave you an official figure. You ask me, I gave you this figure as a Chinese ambassador. This is a very authoritative figure. In the past 40 years, the Uyghur population increased, the population in Xinjiang increased to double. The population doubled.
Notice he's talking about the population of Xinjiang.
No so-called forced abortion and so on.
But there is a program of forced sterilization being imposed on Uyghur women at the moment.
And that's what they go on to. They go on to talk about forced sterilization. But, you know, notice Andrew Marr is talking about the reduction in population that Chinese authorities talk about, 84% less in the Uyghur areas.
Yes.
And the Chinese ambassador is talking about Xinjiang. Xinjiang, yes, the population has increased significantly. I think the statistics I was looking at said that just 20 years ago, I think it was 95% Uyghur and 5% Han Chinese, and now it's about 60% Uyghur and 40% Han Chinese. So, you know, the increase in population in Xinjiang seems to be from an influx of the Han Chinese population. And so both stats stack up. Both stats stack up that Xinjiang might indeed be increasing in population even as the Uyghur population is going down and going down significantly. But yeah, an extraordinary example really of the Chinese ambassador being sort of held to account in a Western democracy, you know, having to face the press in a way that you know, I don't think a Chinese politician would be used to on Chinese state TV. That's for sure.
No, and I think the, at the end of the day, like his job is to defend China in the you know. So I mean, you can understand that in a sense the BBC are obligated to speak to the Chinese ambassador, but I don't think we should be surprised when the Chinese ambassador isn't hugely forthcoming about what's going on. So
notice the inconsistency about like he says to begin with. He said, "Oh, you showed this to me before," and then he says, "Oh, but I have no idea where this has come from. You know, how am I expected to respond to it?"
Well, like, also, I mean,
this is your second bite at the cherry.
And I mean, Andrew Marr quotes the statistic of 84% from their own records, which then he immediately says, "No, I'm giving you the official figure." Which he may well be giving them the official figure. Maybe the population has increased by that much, but as we've just said, that is the population of Xinjiang and not the Uyghur community itself. So, I mean, it's fascinating, and I think the thing I think that struck me most about this cropping up is that this is an old clip, you know, or old in the sense not fresh. But yet it is so, the similarities with, as you've already drawn, Auschwitz are so striking, you know, the shaved heads being laid on, you know, put onto trains, and then, you know, the seizing of things where the human hair and things like that, at least the suggestion of experimentation, removal of organs and all kinds of things like that. It is so strikingly like Auschwitz, that you would think that our response would be immediate kind of horror and, what have we always said? This will never happen again. And it kind of feels like it's crept past us, like we've gradually let it happen. And yeah, it's mind-boggling, isn't it, that here we are, still for many people living memory of those events, and yet we seem quite reluctant to respond to this.
Yeah. Well, someone like Mesut Ozil, playing for Arsenal, sort of from German and Turkish origin, Muslim backgrounds. He back in December on Instagram and Twitter tweeted out about persecution of Uyghurs, and that was very brave of him to do, actually, back in the day. And he tweeted out, Qurans are being burnt, mosques are being shut down, Muslim schools are being banned, religious scholars are being killed, brothers are forcefully being sent to camps. The Muslims are silent, their voice is not heard. And so, he tweeted and Instagrammed that back in December. And then instantly, first thing that happened was that Chinese state TV withdrew from showing the next Arsenal match, which happened to be Arsenal versus the Premier League champions, Manchester City. And instead of that, they just played a repeat of an old game. And obviously they were throwing their weight around because Chinese state TV pays more than $500 million to the Premier League for the rights to the Premier League football. And then Arsenal backs down, and what do they say? The content published is Ozil's personal opinion. As a football club, Arsenal has always adhered to the principle of not involving itself in politics, and so they distance from him, massively. And then, of course, when other political things come up, Marcus Rashford on the issue of school lunches is suddenly a national hero, and makes political gain by talking about lunches. Yeah, and we're okay being political then. Why is Arsenal wanting to distance itself?
We're willing to be pro school lunches, but we're not willing to be anti-genocide. We won't go on record with that. Which is fascinating, isn't it? And like you say, well, that's because and I think it does come down to that China are not going to pull their money out of your club or your broadcasting because you got lunch for kids. Right. They may well pull their money out if you are criticising their government for human rights abuses and a genocide. And I think when we talked about this before last year, we made mention that possibly the reason that so many nations are quiet on this, or had been quiet, or we hadn't picked up on it, was because basically we are so tied into China. If this was a Syria, like a country like Syria, we would be straight in there, as we have been. Either militarily or politically, because I think we know in cases like that we can throw our weight around and in a military way and not be in any danger, and we know that they don't hold anything over us in terms of the economy. And I think with China, what it has shown us is that obviously military conflict would not be desirable anyway, but of course China are a vast world superpower. A nuclear power. But I think probably more than that is I imagine more is the financial issue. And my suspicion is that someone put on in a comment on one of the articles about this, they said it was to do with Dominic Raab being asked if this was genocide, and he said, I don't know if I want to use that word, etc. And someone put in the comments said, it's not genocide when you're hoping for a post-Brexit deal. And then they put hashtag cash-based morality or cash for morality or something like that. And I think I think there's a lot of truth in that we're willing to. We put money before morality, basically. You know, we would rather have the cash than stand up for human rights abuses.
Yeah. And the idea of seeing things, you don't see what you don't want to see. And it's just a psychological fact of human nature. You're going to let the things that disconfirm your narrative just go straight on past. You're going to let the things that would cause cognitive dissonance go right on past. You're going to let the things that would contradict your comfort and ease and prosperity go right on past. And you're going to focus on the things that confirm your biases and, you know. And so, like, part of the issue is just, you know, will we even see this? Will we even make space for this? Will we even notice what's going on?
Well, I was saying to you that, again, we overlook these things. So I shared a little bit on social media in the past week about these articles and just saying, you know, I was seeing these things about organ harvesting, and I was saying, does anyone know any more about this? Because this is very disturbing. And then yesterday I shared the BBC's article about, you know, what was going on in China in the camps, and again I kind of said, you know, this is very, very concerning, and I've not heard a lot about it. It seems to have passed us by, and very few people have engaged with it. And I said, you know, but if I post a video of me falling off a swing, everyone will be all over it, you know. And it's fascinating just to see how we can let stuff pass us by. You know, and we're all guilty of it, I'm sure, in many ways. But particularly when it seems so obvious and so extreme, you know, with the footage and the trains and the camps, you would think it would elicit a reaction in us. But it doesn't seem to.
Yeah, I mean, there's the apocryphal tale of, you know, when the Titanic went down, you know, the Dundee Herald instead on its front page said, you know, fishing boat sinks and 2 local fishermen die. And you can sort of understand that, because within that local community, of course, the loss of those 2 fishermen might actually impact the locality a lot more than 1,000 people drowning around the other side of the world. And you know, there is that kind of provinciality to all of us, that things don't strike us as important when they happen far away. But I mean, at the same time, we saw how, you know, the events in Minneapolis echoed around the world.
Yeah.
So there's lots more going on about what is it that we take notice of and what is it that we feel connected to. And it would be sad if we don't feel connected to Uighur Muslims. I mean, it sounds so exotic. There they are in Xinjiang Province, and you know, it's in the wilds of China, which already is such a mysterious land to us. It is just much harder to get that sense of fellow feeling, that sense of common humanity, to strike us. And I think at that stage you start to see that the doctrine of human equality is non-obvious, actually. That actually my flesh does feel a lot more affinity for the tribe that's around me, and it feels a lot less affinity for those who are more distant to me. And you can therefore understand, in a Chinese context, it is alien to them to have this more Christianized concept that we have of the universality of human rights. And even though China are signatories to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they are consistent, violators of it. And it just makes you see that their civilization and certainly the culture of the Chinese Communist Party, I don't think it's obvious to them why you should have fellow feeling with, far off tribes. And actually our deep-seated, liberal sense that everyone is equal and that the death of someone around the other side of the world is equal to the death of someone in your own town. That's actually a non-obvious doctrine, and it's Christianity that's taught it to us.
I think one of the things that struck me has been like, how do I respond to this as a Christian? So if I see this and I just don't do anything about it, and there's one sense in which I can't do anything about it. It's different to, homelessness in my town, when I could pull something together, and go out and feed people or talk to people like that. These people on the other side of the world, under a huge government, one of the biggest nation, the biggest nation on the planet. In a sense, there's nothing I can do as an individual, but I feel like I've got to say something for a number of reasons. Firstly, because everyone is made in the image of God, and regardless of whether this group of people are Muslims and do not believe the same things as me, they are still people made in the image of God, men, women, and children, who therefore have a value, and the things that are being done to them are horrific. So I feel I need to stand on that front, but also that I feel that it's just an issue of, if we don't stand for things like this. I made light of it a week or two ago, didn't I? That we'll make noise about chocolate eggs, but we won't make noise about genocide. It just seems bananas. And I think if there's any way for the church to lose even more face in the West, it's by not speaking up about actual genocide. So that concerns me, and it reminded me a bit of when we went to Brefos, the conference on abortion, and my views on abortion before that had been very much kind of, I do think it's wrong, but I think basically some people are going to want to do it, and it causes so much of an issue to talk about these things and so on. It's easier not to say anything and just so on. But I remember
a shy pro-lifer, like so many evangelicals would sort of naturally just sort of shy pro-lifers.
But it was for me, the moment that kind of really brought it home was hearing the talk being given, preaching on the Good Samaritan, and I realised just when sometimes you have those moments when something just hits you between the eyes, and I kind of realised, well, I if I do that, if I don't speak up, I'm no different to the person who just sees someone on the road and walks on by, because I don't want to cause too much of a fuss. I don't want to get caught up in all this stuff, yada yada yada, and all the baggage it will bring with it. And every time I think every time we hear the Good Samaritan story, we're so familiar with it. We kind of just go, oh well, of course those guys are wrong. We know that the people who walk by, that's so wrong, isn't it? But we're not like that. And then you kind of go, no, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Right.
And I feel like the same in this situation. Like, how can we? If we say nothing, it just feels like we're just seeing it and walking on by.
Right. And there are those verbs, aren't there, in Luke chapter 10, as Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Luke 10, verse 33, but a Samaritan, as he travelled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he came and put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, took care of him, and gave the 2 denarii to the innkeeper. But it's those 3 verbs. He came to where the man was, he saw him, and he took pity on him. And it's that, will we stop and turn aside and see this stuff which will take us out of our comfort zones, and force us to see the world in a new way. That's really, really key. And then what do we?
I was just say again, it just reminds me a bit as well of the Wilberforce quote to do with slavery, isn't it? Where he says you can choose to turn away, but you can never say you didn't know. I think that has a lot of weight in it as well. Just, in one sense, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? You can claim, I didn't know this stuff was going on. But once we know, if we choose to turn away, man.
Yeah. And then what everyone will want to ask is, well, now what? Well, you can sign petitions to get these things debated in Parliament, and thankfully we've now just gone over 100,000 signatories on a petition to get this debated in Parliament, whether we want to have economic sanctions on China over their treatment of the Uyghurs. There are other things you can do. You can discover all sorts of companies that profit from what is going on in Xinjiang Province, and there can be economic boycotts. But what can we do as Christians as well? Well, we're going to get onto the show a missionary who has been reaching out to the Uyghurs and sharing the love of Jesus there and trying to strengthen the church there in Xinjiang. And we'll be talking to him about how it is that the church is faring in China, and how it is that we can pray into this situation. Because I think what is fascinating is that here we've got the largest country on planet Earth that is throwing its weight around in a significant way, and is having a massive global impact. And at the same time, there is a giant within it called the church, and
isn't it the case that there are more? It's something like they reckon there are more Christians in China than the rest of the world put together, something like that, or is that an inflated figure?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, you hear such differing figures from anything from sort of 50, 60 million up to 130 million. I've heard in terms of. I mean, it's just very difficult to know because of the underground nature of so much of the church there. But it is significant. And it's a significant minority within, increasingly, the most significant nation of the 21st century. And, perhaps the 21st century will belong to China. But what might God be doing there? He might be doing a tremendous work in China and then through China. Who knows? We'll be talking to this missionary and figuring out what we can do as Christians. But what else? What other lessons can we draw from this, Paul?
Well, I mean, I think for us as Christians, I mean, one thing it should push us towards, at least, is to be pushing towards prayer ourselves here. That we ought to be a people who are praying. I think it's a reminder for me as well that there are lots of things in the Christian community in our country or in the West that we're having discussions about, which is and they're not unimportant things. But it's very easy for us to get bogged down in argument and disagreement over doctrine and belief, and forget about loving our neighbour. And just the reality of the world out there. And I wonder whether things like this are a bit of a wake-up call sometimes for us as a church to put aside some of the foolish things perhaps that we're involved with, or the unnecessary things, the things that just aren't fruitful for the kingdom. And to remind us to throw ourselves on the mercy of God and to pray for God, for the Lord to work in these situations and to bring about an end to this stuff, And it just sounds like a really trite answer, doesn't it? Like, let's all pray, But if we truly believe that we operate with weapons that are not of this world, and we our weapons are not flesh and blood. But we take up the sword of the Spirit and all those things. Push comes to shove. This is an opportunity for us to do that and join together in praying for these people. And who knows as well, as you said, China is obviously a growing power. I think they're a one-party state as it stands. It's very difficult to see how that kind of state can become anything other than that without great, kind of great unrest and conflict. But I guess we want to pray that God would change that country as well. Like we say, pray for our Christian brothers and sisters as well. I mean, we know that it's not just Uighur Muslims, although it seems predominantly Muslims. There is some talk of Christian communities as well, facing some persecution there.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely, yeah. It's a sign of what the one-party state wants to do, to clamp down on any dissident voices, and so they're very threatened by the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're very threatened by Christians being a fourth column within their country, and so the church, they consider the church to be a great threat, and in one sense, the church is. A great threat, even as the church is for them in Christ. But so I think pray and I think preach as well that what is the view of the human person that enables a genocide? And actually, without Jesus, it's actually genocide becomes possible. Jesus comes into this world to love and redeem the least and the last and the lost by becoming the little guy, by becoming a religious minority within the Roman Empire and getting crucified. He is one who is, he was a victim of religious violence, and he was a persecuted minority. And it's Jesus who's taught the world to be sensitive to minorities and to the weak. And it's Jesus who's taught the world to have an equal regard for every single person, no matter how economically useful they are. And this has become secularized in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, but it's a thoroughly Jesus-shaped thing. And you can understand why the Communist Party might value people only according to their economic utility or according to the market rate of whatever organs are necessary. That is a chilling vision for how you value human beings. But I think without Jesus, that is how you value human beings.
Yes.
You only value them according to their economic usefulness, or according to the minerals. I'm a sack of protoplasm, and how much do you get for the minerals in my body? About the same as a Big Mac. On Twitter, I tweeted out this video that we made 2 years ago. If people remember the Jordan Peterson versus Sam Harris debates. There was a moment during the Sam Harris-Jordan Peterson debates when they talked about value and how it is we value things and persons. And this is a clip from one of the videos that we made at that point, and I think it really has bearing on what is the value of a human being. Let's have a look.
So if I tell you this is the glass that Elton John drank from in his last concert here,
yeah,
right? It could be that you're just the biggest Elton John fan ever, and it's worth quite a lot to you.
Elton John's glass is worth more than the contents of that glass. Okay, that's good news, because when I look at a human being and I wonder what their worth is, I do not want to limit their worth to the material contents in front of me. See, here's a bag of protoplasm, right? A human being. And I could probably get about $20 for the minerals that are inside that bag of protoplasm. But we know that people are worth more than $20, right? So here's hoping that people can be valued not according to what's inside them. Here's hoping that there is a value system that will accord people dignity that goes beyond their material structure or their particular strength or intelligence. Here's hoping there is an Elton John out there. That's not how the analogy is developed in the debate. In the debate, Harris says that the glass is like the land of Palestine.
The reason why the Israelis and the Palestinians can't negotiate as though their problems could be solved by a real estate transaction is because they have irrational and irreconcilable claims upon land.
Do you think they're any more irrational than the claim that glass is worth something?
Well, no, it's like that.
According to Harris, it's irrational to attribute to objects values that can't be seen in the objects themselves. His example is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict over the land. But look what Harris does with the analogy.
The complete analogy is we're about to fight over Elton John's glass, and Elton John was never here. Right.
Well, and everybody claps. But everybody claps when they think that the glass is Palestine. Would they clap if they knew that the glass was the human person? Get rid of Elton John and the glass must be valued on its own merits. Get rid of God, who makes us in his image, and we must be valued on our own merits. And some are stronger and some are weaker. Some are smarter, some are dumber. Some are born to rule and some surely are born to be ruled over.
And, take the God who makes us in his image out of the equation, and what are the Uighur Muslims worth? What are the Falun Gong adherents worth? What are Christian minorities worth? What is anybody worth? Well, they're only worth what you see within them, unless there's someone outside the system who has valued us.
Yeah, and that's true. And we've talked about this before. Where that's true even here, even with just the human rights, isn't it? That human rights is although it's a Christian thing that's become secularized. It's just based on this belief, isn't it, of something outside that gives value to the human life. You could quite reasonably look at human rights and just go, okay, but why? And because even in the West, we've lost the foundation for those human rights, really, if we were to start picking at them. And of course, we see that happening. It unravels more and more.
Well, in my debate with Matt Dillahunty, he always sort of said, look, I'm a humanist and I believe in human rights because we of course care about human beings. And my comeback was always, well, who's we? Who do you define as we? And it always becomes, the strong majority who draw the line around me and my tribe. And I'm always liable to leave you and your tribe on the outside because you're not helpful to me. And the moment you're not helpful to me, you're on the outside of what I'm going to, define as a true and proper human being. And you might be 3/5 of a human being, but you're not as valuable as I am. And that's always the danger. Unless there's somebody from outside the human system who values the entirety of the human system, without that, i.e. without Jesus, then you've just got members within the human family who just value people like them. And human rights always, that's the thing. Like, atheism cannot guarantee humanism because you need something from outside the system to value all those within the system. And you get that with Jesus, and you just don't get that in the secularized version. So, what can we say to China? Why should China value the human rights of everyone, including the minorities? Why should they? And that becomes a very big problem for pluralists who just say, well, I've got my system, you've got your system. What is it that's above here that says this Western value is superior to this communist value? What is it up here that says this is closer to the truth and that is further from the truth? You've got to have something up here, or else it all collapses.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I think we should probably draw a line under things here, and people should stay tuned for our interview with a Chinese missionary, or rather an American missionary to Uighur Muslims in China, and we'll figure out furthermore how it is that we can pray for the situation, and how it is that God might be using the church in China to bring about his kingdom purposes. So stay tuned for that. But Paul, how can people get in touch with us?
So you can get in touch with us via all the major kind of social media platforms. So you can find us on Facebook, with Speak Life UK there, Twitter, Instagram. We're kind of all under the same handles there. You can also get hold of us on the website, speaklife.org.uk. And there's lots of, I can find lots of resources there, but you can also find us, if you're looking for resources in particular, best bet is our channel on YouTube, which hopefully this is where you're watching this anyway. So if you're interested in more stuff, have a look through our videos, do subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, so that will notify you when we actually release new videos, and that will keep you up to date with kind of all the main things going on with us.
Awesome. Paul Feasy, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Glenn.
See you guys. Cheers.